is no greater thrill in sport than skiing off-piste, yet many quite good skiers never get to grips with it, believing it both to be difficult and dangerous. Well, top Basie trainer Mark Jones and his co-presenter Peter Hart blow away a few myths and show you how easily you can adapt your basic piste technique to cope with deep snow. They display the advantages and disadvantages of various ski designs, before looking at the all-important question of where it's safe to go and where to avoid, what insurance you need, and how off-piste skiing is controlled in different countries. They start with a few exercises on piste, before heading into a few inches of fluffy Canadian powder to identify the real problems. Mark then describes in intimate detail how to turn in the powder so the skis remain level and the curves remain smooth. They then tackle the problems of control in the steeper, deeper stuff. Mark focuses on the pole plant, on how to start off, and various other exercises which help develop better rhythm and speed control. And in the last section, they head for the trees and offer a few words of advice on this exciting, awe-inspiring, but potentially hazardous pastime. In Deeper takes it all a step further. Our intrepid duo, Mark Jones and Peter Hart, show you what's really involved in skiing the backcountry as they prepare you for everything and anything the mountain can throw at you. It begins with a masterclass from Mark on how to turn the snow to steam with the new off-piste freeride skis, and on the key backcountry skill of how to assess jumps, takeoff, control flight, and land with style and precision. He then looks at the essential extras needed for a trip away from the patrolled area, including the avalanche transceiver. Having practiced the search routine, they actively seek out horrible snow and offer tips on how to keep good form in crud, soup, and breakable crust. Mark also reveals some unusual techniques for handling the extra steep before enticing Pete down the odd vertical couloir. Teaming up with a local guide, they then head off into the real backcountry in search of the snow and slopes that dreams are made of. On the way, they concentrate on mountain craft and staying safe. How to choose the best route to climb up, how to cover the mountain as a group, and generally, how to enjoy this stunning environment with a minimum of risk. This program alone won't turn you into an avalanche expert, but gives out a lot of general information about mountain safety. They spend a day with the avalanche patrol team as they assess the potential danger of each slope, dig snow holes to check the stability of the snowpacks, and then set their charges. Shot in Lake Louise in the Canadian Rockies, In Deep and In Deeper are visually stunning and genuinely sweep the cloud of mystery away from off-piste skiing.
Cold, frustrating, difficult, impossible. All words have been used to describe people's attempts at learning to windsurf, and that's usually because they borrowed a friend's board, gone out in too much wind on a rough sea without a clue what they're trying to do. I can't help noticing that these sailors behind me, although they're relative beginners, can not only all do it, but also having a good time. Now, Alan here is the RYA Windsurfing manager, and it's his role to What exactly is it you do, Alan?
Well, my job is to ensure that any centre that uses the RYA name has an excellent location, uses good equipment, qualified instructors, and has plenty of safety cover. The most important thing is that everybody has fun learning to windsurf.
And not surprisingly, the Sunwell Centre here in Betez is RYA recognised. In fact, it's one of the best places we've found anywhere to learn to windsurf, and that's why we've come here to film our beginners programme.
You can't really learn to windsurf by watching TV. You really should go on a proper course and then use this video in conjunction with the RYA manual to bring it all back and remind you of the essential techniques and safety considerations. The books will also give you a deeper insight into many of the more technical aspects of the sport which we have chosen to leave out in this programme, such as rigging and sailing theory. And don't be put off by the idea of theory. It's not a whole load of nautical mumbo-jumbo delivered by a tedious old boffin, just solid information which serves to make things clearer. There may seem to be a lot to take in all at once, but remember, on a course, the basics such as getting on, pulling up the rig, turning round and sailing off will be learnt on a stable and dry land-based simulator.
That's it. Remember to keep your back straight, use your legs. Marvellous.
By the time you step aboard for real, you are already semi-proficient and well past the wobbly wreck stage. So without further ado, let me introduce you to RYA instructor Ben and recent convert Sally, who are going to take you through the first part of the programme.
I thought we were making a programme about windsurfing, Ben.
Well, we are, Sally, but learning to juggle is like learning any new skill. It's much better if you break it down into small, simple parts that are easy to achieve. Here, I'll show what I mean with the clubs. 1, 2, 3, thank you. Right, rather than throwing you in at the deep end and giving you all 3, I'll just give you 1 to start. That's it.
We've broken the programme down into 4 main areas. Learn to windsurf follows the syllabus of a beginner's course, by the end of which you'll be able to go in all directions in light winds. In part 2, we show you how to carry your equipment, launch and land with a touch of style. Moving into strong winds, we show you how to transfer that power into pure speed with advice on stance, harness work and foot straps. And finally, we reveal a host of tips and training exercises to drive you smoothly round the bends. And throughout the programme, we'll be showing you a number of methods to stay out of trouble. OK, let's do it. The difference between success and failure in the early stages is often nothing more than having the right equipment and making sure it's all properly set up. So to start with, we're going to look at the sort of board and rig you'll use on a beginner's course. First of all, the board. Right at the front, you'll find a towing eye to help the rescue boat or another board pull you back to shore. In the middle of the deck lies the mast track, and it's here that you plug in the rig. You can adjust its position while sailing, but to begin with, just lock it off in the middle. And behind the track is the dagger board, a retractable foil that stabilises the board and stops it drifting sideways. The fin screws into the tail of the board and provides directional stability, especially in high winds. The rig is made up of the sail, mast, boom and mast foot. The sail is supported along its front edge by the mast, tensioned by the mast foot at the base, and attached to the boom at its free corner. This basic sail has just one fiberglass batten in the head to help it hold its shape. Time now for a bit of personal adjustment, and you'll notice there's a cutout in the front of the sail so you can alter the level of the boom. You adjust it simply by opening the clamp lever and then moving it up or down so it's shoulder height when the rig is stood upright. The downhaul rope attaches the sail to the mast foot and more or less controls the sail stability. The more tension there is, the easier the sail is to control as the wind increases. The outhaul determines how much fullness and therefore power there is in the middle of the sail. It's time now to launch. Rigs have a nasty habit of blowing away if you leave them on dry land, so carry the rig in first with one hand on the mast and the other on top of the boom, and make sure the mast is pointing into wind. Then drop it in shallow water, and there it will stay whilst you get the board. Now, boards are tough, but not so tough that you can drag them across the rocks. So grab the head of the dagger with the back hand and the mast track with your front hand and lift from the middle. Then drop it into knee-deep water to avoid damaging the fin and plug in the rig. Now, attach this safety leash first. This is a vital accessory that holds board and rig together should the mast foot pop out on the water. The universal joint is quite stiff, so it helps to tip the board on its side as you locate it and then lock the mast foot into the track. With the board in about thigh-deep water and with the rig on the downwind side of the board, walk round to the upwind side and roll down the dagger board. Climb on in the middle, grab the bottom of the uphaul rope for stability and check that you have your back to the wind. Place your feet either side of the mast foot and with the arms straight, slowly stand up, pulling the rig out of the water. Then work your hands up the rope until the sail flies clear. Then put both hands on the mast, and this is called your secure position. And here's your checklist. Board at 90 degrees to the wind, feet on the centre line either side of the mast, knees and ankles slightly flexed, back straight, arms extended, head up, and body balanced against the rig. You can manoeuvre the board in the secure position just by leaning the rig against the wind. Lean it towards the back of the board and the front turns towards the wind. Lean it towards the front of the board and you'll turn away from the wind. It's with that simple rig action that you keep the rig at 90 degrees to the board and the board across the wind. And if you want to turn the board right round through 180 degrees, the same principles apply. Do it by turning the front of the board into wind. So lean the rig back as before, but this time, as you turn up into wind, shuffle your feet around the mast, keeping them close to the centre line and away from the edges. And if you keep leaning the rig in the same direction, you'll end up back in the secure position, facing the other way. Now, the further you lean the rig away from the body and the harder you lean it against the wind, the faster you turn. And in windsurfing, speed equals stability. Already Ben's back in the secure position, which he must adopt before trying to sail away. So quietly confident in your newfound ability to balance and turn the board, you're ready to get sailing. As always at this stage, you start from the secure position, making sure the board is at 90 degrees to the rig. Then look along the line of the board and choose a goal point across the wind before moving your feet back behind the mast. Then pull the rig across the front of the body to the point where it balances itself. Rest your backhand on the boom, and as you pull in gently towards you, you'll feel the wind fill in the sail. The power comes on, and you're off. Now hang on, don't get carried away, but having sailed a little way towards your goal, return to the secure position and turn the board around. And now, facing where you came from, pick a new goal, move the feet, pull the rig across to its balance point, put the backhand on, and off you go. Move the front hand to the boom as soon as you feel comfortable. The trick now is to balance against the pull in the sail by dropping your shoulders back and bending the knees and ankles, and all the time keeping the mast upright. Sometimes the rig ends up on the upwind side. Not a problem. Just uphaul it halfway so the end of the boom is still in the water, whereupon the wind catches the sail and turns you round. When your back is once more facing the wind, pull the rig up the rest of the way and into the secure position. Don't drop the rig every time you get hit by a gust, just let the backhand go. Otherwise, the constant uphauling will exhaust you. And once again, If you get pulled off balance, release the backhand, adjust your own balance, and then set off again. If it's a bit windier, lower your body position and lean back. Steering on the move uses the same principle as turning in the secure position. You just lean the rig forward or back, except now you have both hands on the boom and power in the sail. So, to turn towards the wind, choose a new goal point upwind, incline the rig back by extending the back arm, and when you want to stop turning, bring it back upright again. To steer away from the wind, lean the rig forward by extending the front arm towards the front of the board. Work on making these movements big and bold, because it's nifty steering that gives you the confidence to sail amongst others. And by throwing the rig right back, bend cranks upwind to avoid a messy collision. In situations where you need to change direction suddenly, you'll find the board steers more quickly into wind than away from it. For the good of all, it's best to stop before the beach rather than the beach stopping you. So as you approach daggerboard depth, depower the sail, return to the secure position, lower the rig into the water, step off gingerly before carrying the board and then the rig up the beach.
Power 6. Sailor down in your area, over.
Got him, Chips. It's that bloke from the RYA again. That's the 4th time today. Hey, AJ, BJ, CJ, go get him! You wouldn't believe how many blokes need rescuing around here. And as it happens, it's not a problem, because at a Sunwell centre there's stacks of rescue cover anyway. But it's not good for either your confidence or your social standing if you have to keep getting dragged back in a boat. So in this next section we're going to show you a variety of ways to help you get yourself back.
A light wind is good for learning, but you can go too far. And when there's not enough even to fill your sail, you really are wasting your time. And the easiest way to get back in little or no wind is to lay the rig down so the boom's resting on the back of the board. Then ease yourself down, lie on the deck and paddle home. This is called the butterfly method, and you can get quite a speed up so long as you keep the rig out of the water. If a strengthening breeze has caught you out, you can make steady progress across the wind by pulling the sail halfway out. But there is a lot of pull in the rig, so it's only good for short distances. Flagging, that means just standing behind the mast and letting the rig flap over the front, is the best way to get downwind in a small crisis. But if none of these methods are getting you anywhere, there's nothing for it but a full self-rescue, and here's Sally going for the record. Sit astride the board, unplug the mast foot and detach the bottom of the uphaul, and work your way around the edge of the sail and pull out the battens, which can then be stored away inside the mast sleeve. Release the outhaul next, and then roll the sail up tightly from the foot in towards the mast. Use the loose uphaul to secure the boom end to the mast before undoing the clamp and folding it up parallel with the mast. You then use the outhaul to secure the other end. All that's left to do is swing the rig around beneath you until it's lying along the deck, then lie aboard and paddle, and we're sure Sally would have got the record were she not slowing down to keep in time with the music. But even the full self-rescue has its limitations, especially if you're exhausted. And if it's not working, loosely re-rig the sail to reduce drift and summon help by waving your arms above your head, or even waving a day-glow flag. But the cardinal rule is to stay with your board, which in an emergency floats a lot better than you. It's time to see what the various courses aboard can sail are and what they're called. So far, you've been sailing across the wind at 90 degrees. This is a beam reach. You can sail upwind at approximately 45 degrees to the wind direction. This is called close hauled. This is the closest you can sail to the wind, and if you try to point up further and head into the no-go zone, you'll just stop and eventually drift backwards. The course downwind of a beam reach is called a broad reach. And when you're sailing with the wind directly behind, you are running or on a run. And perhaps surprisingly, this is one of the slowest points of sailing. We'll examine the hows and whys of each point of sailing throughout the programme. First, we're going to look at the art of sailing upwind and follow it with a faster turn called a tack. From your beam reach, pick a new goal point about 45 degrees further upwind and then steer towards it by leaning the rig back. Once you're heading in your new chosen direction, bring it upright again. You are now close hauled and need to keep steering with subtle rig movements to stay on line. And now to tack, place your front hand on the mast and put your front foot in front of the mast before leaning the rig back to steer right up into wind. And now use deft, subtle footwork to step around the mast. Keep inclining the rig until you've got your back to the wind once more. And now sail off, but this time you start off close hauled. Let's see that again, Sally, but just a little bit quicker. Move the front hand and foot as you lean the rig back. The aim now is to take just a few lightning steps, because the quicker you get your feet back onto the centre line on the new side and the sooner you get power back in your sail, the more stable you'll be. In most walks of life, we choose a straight line as the quickest way to get from A to B. But such a plan when sailing to an upwind goal takes you straight into the dreaded no-go zone. Instead, you have to zigzag. Now, to make it to his flashing upwind goal, Ben sails a series of close-hold courses, followed by fast tacks. Now, for the purpose of demonstration, he's been kind enough to perform this task within the width of a TV screen. You, on the other hand, could widen your zigzags and could make it up to the top in just 2 legs. To sail downwind, you bear away, and as you turn onto a broad reach, move your feet back so they're either side of the daggerboard facing forwards. You open the sail out so it's 90 degrees to the board, and you are now running. You steer on a run by leaning the rig the opposite side to the direction you want to turn. Lean the sail left to turn right, and you can help the steering by leaning your weight in the same direction as the sail. And if the wind gets up a bit, just step a bit further back on the board to counterbalance the extra pull in the sail. To jibe from a run, let go with your backhand, and as the rig swings over the front, step forward into the secure position and sail on. Jibing is delightful because the board just keeps going, and so it's a lot more stable. And here's that jibe one more time. Get yourself settled and relaxed on a run. Release the backhand and grab the mast, followed by the front hand, and step forward onto the centre line and use the rig to turn onto a beam reach before sailing off at your leisure. With all the techniques you've learned so far, you can start going places and sail around a course in light winds. We've laid out a triangle of buoys, and Ben is now zigzagging to the white one upwind. Remember, it's close hauled and tack, close hauled and tack. One more tack and he should be there. He now bears away onto a broad reach to the bottom mark, where he jibes by letting the rig swing over the front. A few laps of that and you really do start to feel in control of your destiny. The board and rig market has at times been rather aptly referred to as the equipment jungle. Perhaps you've already tried to hack your way through it and have encountered things whose uses are not immediately apparent. Well, don't worry, solid advice is at hand. For your first steps in windsurfing, your equipment must be totally free of bells and whistles. For example, at an RYA school, the board will be big, stable and uncluttered, and the rig small and light, and it's that helps you overcome the wobbles. But as you move on towards levels 2 and 3, you really need a higher tech combination like this one. Look at the rig first. Well, it's bigger, so that's going to give you more power, speed and excitement. It's also got stretch-free materials and full-length battens which stabilise the profile and give you much more control as the wind gets up. And now onto the board. It's smaller and lighter, therefore faster and more manoeuvrable. It's also got room for these foot straps, which we're going to fit as the wind gets up towards planing conditions. But we don't need them for the moment, because you still need an uncluttered deck if you want to get off the beach with a bit of style. The progression is to launch the board and rig as one. We've got perfect conditions for practicing, a light breeze blowing across the beach. Plug the mast foot in by the water's edge so that the sail is on the downwind side with the mast facing back. Now you fly the rig by grabbing the mast above the boom with your front hand and walking upwind. Then just lift the tail with the backhand and slide the whole lot into the water, letting the tail go when you're in knee-deep water. And you're off. Coming ashore is more or less the same process in reverse. Put your front hand on the mast and step off on the upwind side, and grab the tail with the backhand as before and shove it ashore. As the nose hits the sand, pivot the board around by walking upwind. The rig will flip over by itself. And to abandon it safely without the wind blowing under it, making sure the mast tip is pointing downwind, and turn the board over. And here's an easy way to carry the rig long distances. Lift it over your head, and with the mast foot pointing into or across the wind gets under it and supports the sail for you. And if you've got foot straps, and I know we haven't fitted them yet, they double as carrying handles. With the front hand on the front strap and the back hand on the top side of the boom, you can actually lift everything clear. And the crowning glory of this new skill is an up-pull-free getaway, the beach start. To beach start, you first have to learn how to manoeuvre the board in the shallows. With the dagger board up, stand on the upwind side. Then if you push down on the boom and walk downwind, you bear away. Then if you lift up on the boom, you just pull the nose upwind because the board is pivoting around the fin. Then to turn it right round, you just keep it going. As you push the nose through the wind, let the sail flip over as if you were jibing. Just as easily, you can turn it upwind. Pull the nose to you and let the rig flip as it goes through the wind. With this simple technique, you can line the board up for the beach start from any angle. And now for the beach start itself. Place the back foot just behind the dagger board. And if it's windy, put it a bit further back. And here we go. Put your back foot on, straighten the arms to lift the rig, and let the increase in power pull you over your back foot. And stay compact as you come up, and just let the wind do the work. The key is to get your weight forward. And Sally can drag a leg in total control because she's directing the power through the boom and into the mast foot. You won't believe how easy it is with just a little practice. On crowded waters, windsurfers attract each other like magnets, and you need to know who has to keep out the way of who. And the first rule is that if, like Sally, you have your right hand forward, you're on starboard tack, and you have right of way over someone on port tack. In this case, Ben, who has to bear away or tack to keep out of Sally's way. And had he been daydreaming or was just being stubborn, Sally would have shouted "starboard" to give him a clue. When two boards are on the same tack, it's the upwind board that must give way. That's Ben again, who can either pass behind or, as he prefers in this case, head up and run parallel. Now, the logic behind the law is that the downwind sailor is unsighted, and if she's stuck in her rival's wind shadow, will be unable to steer. Here they both are on the same tack, but Ben is behind and going faster. Now, being the overtaking board, Ben has to keep clear. And he can pass on either side, but at the same time, Sally must hold her line. But the best advice of all is to steer clear of everybody, especially power-driven craft, although legally, you'll be pleased to hear, they have to keep out the way of you. Windsurfing is fun in all conditions, but when the wind gets up, wow. So to get you up to speed, in this section we're going to show you how to refine your stance, hook in and tuck into the foot straps. Mastery of strong wind is all about balance and mobility. So still in lightish winds, have a go at these exercises, all designed to heighten your touch. Try walking up and down the board. Even better, find a secluded spot away from curious onlookers and try standing on one leg. Both exercises give you a feel for the board's balance point. And all the time you're unwittingly improving your rig handling, and no more so than with this exercise. Walk back down the board and keep it level by leaning down on the boom, a vital element of many high wind manoeuvres, notably getting into the foot straps. Ultimately, apparent effortlessness does stem from balancing the rig, and above all avoiding the situation where you rely on beef and brawn to heave it into position. And this cunning stunt, sitting down and trimming it with your hands off the boom, soon teaches you how little muscle power is needed to support a rig so long as you keep the mast upright. And indeed, it's keeping the mast upright that's one of the key elements of successfully adapting your stance for stronger winds. As the pull in the sail increases, push the shoulders back on straight arms and bend a little at the hips to lower your weight and gain more leverage. The knees bend to move the body in and out to absorb the bumps. And now that the board wants to skim across the water, known as planing, the feet edge right back down the board to allow the nose to lift. Now Sally is fitter than most, but even with fine technique, her arm muscles will soon cry, enough! So as soon as you're hanging off the boom with some confidence, it's time to slip on a garment that will change your strong wind life forever, the harness.
And here is a harness. It's a bizarre looking thing. There are a few different designs, but basically the one that's best for you is one that fits and is comfortable. And here are a couple we put on earlier. They must fit snugly, so they spread the load through your backside and lower back. And when you're putting them on, you've got to make sure the straps are really tight, so the spreader bar and hook stay close to your hips, unlike that. Now, to get as comfortable and laid back as we are on the water, you've got to make sure that those things there are set up correctly, the harness lines.
The theory is very simple. For the harness to be a help rather than a hindrance, the loop must correspond exactly to the sail's centre of effort, so that when you hook in, your centre of gravity, the hook is pulling directly against the power.
And to find that balance point on the beach, you support the rig as if you were sailing, with the hands wide apart. And then you bring them closer and closer together until eventually you can support the rig with one hand. Then you place the harness lines equidistant from that point. And when you hook in, you should then be able to balance the rig on your body alone. Now, the first time you try all this, you've got to be gentle on yourself. So to start with, lower the boom to chest height. And then go for a long line. And that means one where you can put your elbow in the loop and then grab the boom. And we've chosen some light wind conditions to go and show you how to hook in and out.
Hang on. First, you have to check that line position again on the water, because now that there's more wind moving over the sail, the centre of effort tends to move around, usually back. So use the same technique. Find the balance point and then move the lines either side. There's a very simple rule associated with hooking in. Pull the boom towards you to engage the line. That way you'll have your weight already committed back and outboard as you take the power of the sail on your body, and you won't get pulled off balance. Once again, slightly slower. With the shoulders back, ease the hips forward and bend the knees to drop the hook onto the line. And to unhook, just pull the boom towards you a fraction and it'll drop out. The movements needed are very small. That trussed-up, vulnerable feeling you get when you first hook in is because you have less freedom to move the rig or body and control the power, but you can still alter the angle of the sail by sliding the line up and down the hook. To depower, turn the body to the front. To power up again, turn it back into the sail. But it's far better to control the power in the harness by just moving your bottom in and out like a pendulum. If the power drops, bend the knees and swing inboard, and in the gust, straighten the legs to push it outboard. All the time, the rig stays still. The aim now is to relax into the harness, stop gripping with the hands and take all the power through your body. And keep moving those lines back and forward until you find the balance point and feel happy about dropping one hand completely off the boom and waving to loved ones. And when you find that confidence to drive all your weight through the harness, when the wind gets up, it's unavoidable that you'll really start to motor. But the drawback of going fast over bumpy water is that even with the feet well back, they are likely to get washed off. Time to recover those foot straps. Here are some I threw away earlier. I shall now screw them to the board, but not just any old way. There, that didn't take long. Now, the right board for this is a floaty one, and preferably one that has positions for training foot straps. Now, this is where the normal ones go, and these are the training straps. Then if you locate the mast foot more in the centre of the mast track, that means the weight of the rig and you are further forward on the board, so it doesn't leap out of control if you've got lead in your boots. Now, lots of problems are caused by badly adjusted straps, and of course these are adjustable. Now, the right position is where you can just see all your toes and the strap fits tightly across the widest part of your foot. And here's Alan, and I'm sure he'll agree with me.
Yeah, but people get very worried that when their feet are in the straps and they fall off, they're going to get stuck.
Yep, but as we both know, Alan, that's actually not a problem, so long as they're properly adjusted. Now, before we go on the water, I've just got one more thing to show you. I don't know what horror stories you've heard or experienced about getting into foot straps, but actually, this is all you do. You hook in, you step back, you put your front foot in, you put your back foot in, and you scream away. Okay, there are a couple of other things to consider, but Alan's out on the water there now to show you exactly how easy it can be. And here he is. He retracts his dagger board, bears away onto a beam reach and hooks in. And as he gathers speed, he lifts the front foot in and then, no hurry, puts the back foot in. Now, I know many of you who've tried this are now shaking your head saying it just doesn't happen like that. Well, obviously it does, but I admit there are a few not immediately obvious elements that are crucial and which we shall now highlight. Put your boom back up to shoulder height so that when you hook in, you're taking the weight off your feet. This allows Alan to stand up and sail on his toes. The board is then more than willing to rise onto its tail and plane. But the experience of most is that of the board slipping into a rocking frenzy and spinning into wind as soon as they move back. Well, the board here doesn't seem to be aware that Alan's moving at all, thanks to two techniques. Firstly, he keeps it balanced from side to side with the back foot. Check its position just behind the front straps, straddling the centre line. When he lifts the front foot into its strap on the upwind side, he compensates and stops the edge sinking by depressing the toes. Secondly, he stops the tail sinking thanks to heaps of mast foot pressure. Hooked in, he swings his hips forward and drives his weight and the power of the sail forward through the boom. And it's that which holds the nose down as the board accelerates. By exaggerating the forward lean, you can even stand behind the straps. If you can manage this exercise in light winds, you'll certainly be able to step back into the straps in planing conditions. And now for a final reminder of the whole thing. First, check your stance, making sure that from the beginning to end, you hold the rig forward on straight arms. And with the feet just in front of the straps, hook in and use your body to power the sail. Wait for the board to accelerate, and then lift the front foot into its strap, trimming the board level with toe pressure from the back foot. And then, when you feel comfortable, ease the back foot into its strap and gradually increase the pressure through it until both feet are evenly weighted. When the wind increases to force 4, the board undergoes a change of character. Like a straining horse, it begs you to let it go. And what's stopping it? Well, it could be the dagger board. On a planing reach, it's now redundant. In fact, it's a positive liability. At planing speed, it does its best to make its way to the surface, then over you go. Yes, the dagger offers stability at rest, but instability at speed. So if when you accelerate, you feel the upwind edge lifting, immediately depower the sail and retract the dagger by rolling it forward with the instep of the back foot. It suddenly feels as if someone has taken the brakes off and you shoot away, under control. Time to experiment now with a new steering method. On the plane with the dagger up, it's just a surfboard, and you turn by banking it over. Push left to go left. The rig is just the motor, it's the knees and ankles and feet that do all the work, moving the weight from edge to edge and keeping the body low and dynamic. Now, off the wind, that lift from the dagger was uncontrollable, but upwind, where you're going slower, you can exploit it. You let it lift the upwind side a few degrees, so its downward edge grips the water and offers extra sideways resistance, a technique known as railing. With a more upright stance and with your feet right out on the rail, you use your body weight to control that lift. But to keep it riding at this perfect angle requires deft adjustment to the mast track. And here's Ben to explain.
Most boards today are fitted with some kind of mast track. They're rarely used to their full advantage, and many people end up just tripping over them. The principle is simple. When sailing upwind with the dagger board down, moving the track towards the front of the board means more board is in the water, and this means you'll sail close to the wind more effectively. When sailing off the wind, moving the track towards the back means less board in the water, and therefore less drag, which means you're playing faster. Let's have a look to see how this works on the water.
Sally's about to make the transition from reaching in the straps to sailing close hauled. Her first move is to activate the track by depressing the pedal, then leaning down on the boom to slide the mast foot forward. That same foot then rolls the head of the dagger back to put it down, and she steps forward into her upwind stance. Moving from close haul to reaching, she bears away to take the pressure off the dagger, then retracts it by rolling it forward with the back foot. She then uses her front foot to depress the pedal and pulls the rig back by lifting up on the boom. Just remember never to have the dagger down when the track is back, because that's when you capsize. Dismantling a modern rig at sea with its monofilm and full-length battens is tricky and potentially damaging to its health. So if your gear suddenly lets you down, try this truly effective method. Whatever the problem, you need to unplug the rig and undo your harness hook. Then slide the rig onto the middle of the board so the boom's resting on the deck. Then crawl between the sail and the boom, make sure the mast foot is facing forward and the sail's out the water, and paddle away. It's dead quick, almost as easy as it looks, and practical in most conditions up to about a force 4. Now if this and all other methods fail, it's good form to slide a few items into a bum bag if you plan to sail any distance offshore. You decide on the priorities. I think these are most important. Well, that was pretty boring. Now for some real action. Well, taking a tumble or two is an essential part of getting better, no matter who you think you are. And no more so than if you want to zip a bit faster around the bends. After their first few sessions, people typically comment that the board is painfully slow to turn. Well, it is probably a heavy board powered by a very small sail by a sailor who at that stage is lacking a certain dynamism. But to say that long boards are unmanoeuvrable is just not true. In the same wind, the same boards have already completed 2 tacks and jibes, whilst our man is still struggling to get through the wind with the weight of the world on his shoulders. But wider rig movements, timed with subtle shifts of weight and a measure of controlled aggression, can have you feeling queasy with the speed of it all. Well, at least that's something our friend won't suffer with. The actual movements of a fast attack don't change much, but the manner does. Firstly, you're going to sail the board right through the wind, use your weight to make the board pivot, make much faster, slicker foot movements, and then finish it off with a big rig change. As you approach the tack, edge the back foot back and weight it to help the board pivot on its tail. At the same time, drop the rig right behind you and keep pulling the boom in until the nose has actually turned through the wind. Now, because you're already heading on the new tack, you can step round move the hands and sail off without having to return to the secure position. The feet are key to it all. The back foot moves back to help the steering, and from now on we're looking at quick, positive steps rather than shuffles. The front foot stretches right around the mast, and with a touch of spring, the feet just change place to land on the centre line on the new tack. Again, the feet help with steering as you push on the front leg to bear the nose off the wind. Here's Ben in a bit more wind, with his feet right out on the rail, cranking up wind as if he were racing. It's a long way to go from back there, around the mast to the same position on the other side, so he has to really stretch the legs and then get the power back in the sail straight away on the new tack to keep his speed up. In racing, it's the sailor who's the quickest to get back into his stance that makes the most ground upwind. Once again, and this time examine the rig action throughout the tack. It starts angled back to steer him into wind, but as soon as he's moved his feet, he uses the front hand on the mast to pull the rig right forward again, so it's in position to bear the board away on the new tack. You have more power in your sail off the wind and therefore more potential turning force. The scope for varying and controlling the arc and the speed are endless. Believe me, it's here that changing direction turns from chore to pure exhilaration. So here's the jibing progression. The starting point is a long, easy turn. You steer off the wind all the way onto a run before stepping back behind a daggerboard and using a little rig scoop combined with light outside foot pressure to tighten the turn. Across the wind and you step forward, flip the sail and go straight into your new sailing position. And that's a level 2 jibe. From there we go for a more energetic bear away, sinking lower and kicking the nose downwind with the front foot. You also step back earlier and initiate the foot steer and the rig scoop well before the run. And now she's really beginning to spin. With the aim now to turn the board around within its own length, the next step is to miss out the bear away altogether. From an upwind course, you step straight back on the tail, stop the board, and then with a wide rig action, pivot on its tail. A true level 3 flare jibe. With that sort of control, you can get real fancy and control the whole thing from the tail with water lapping over your knees. When you want to get horizontal again, you pull on the power and scoop, then just hang on. And the final step with the wind building is to retract the dagger and planing in, put the back foot on the inside edge and bank the board into the first half of the turn, and then use a rig scoop to complete the last half. I don't know how easy that looked, but it's all about power control and weight distribution. So here's some exercises and some handy pointers. Earlier in the programme, Sally showed you how to steer on a run. Well, this is the same game, but with a bit more oomph. With the feet by the dagger, the board will react to foot steering, albeit slowly. But step right back so your ankles are wet, and with the dagger down, the slightest bit of outside foot pressure causes a spin. Get a rhythm going and start to coordinate foot and rig. Left foot down, lean the rig left. Right foot down and lean the rig right. And up the commitment levels and make the turns wider and wider. And when you've had enough, just flip the rig and finish it off. In light winds, even with the tail sunk, your turning power is limited to how wide you can scoop the rig, which isn't very far if you leave your hands in their normal positions. But now watch the hands. I'm right at the back of the board, but it's not going round. But just by shifting the hands a foot towards the clew, I can make a wider scoop, and round she goes. However, there are two potential downers to turning so fast. The first is that you can be easily flung to the side like off a spinning roundabout, unless you angulate. What? Well, as you turn, there's a critical point dead downwind where the sail and the centrifugal force are pulling you outwards. You have to lean shoulders outwards to scoop the rig, so you counteract that pull by dropping the knees and lower body to the inside, hence the need for angulation at the waist. And the other obvious downer of being a speedy revolver is that of not being able to stop. If you get caught with your tail sunk, you'll either keep spinning right round into wind or just drop off the back. To stop the rotation, you have to level the board off, and that means stepping forward early, really early. The moment the board turns through the wind, you step the new front foot right up to the mast foot. As the nose sinks back down, you get back on the straight and narrow. But if you've gone for a big tail sink, you have to throw your weight forward onto the boom and into the mast foot to get the nose down before you can walk forward. Well, that's enough of that. Before the next section, let's have a little flurry of some fast stuff. So we're now planing in the foot straps and in the harness. Now in this next section we're going to really hot it up, starting with the calf jibe, followed by the 360, and then really get into some jumps and probably the very dangerous aerial jibe. Yeah.
Calf jibes, next video.
And I just thought they'd rather like to know about it. It's exciting stuff.
We just spent the last fortnight making a video on this.
Yeah, I mean, I was in that one, don't you remember?
Oh, Olympic hopeful Jane Clegg. She's in it? Oh, wait, we shot it last week.
Yeah. All the turns, all the jumps, everything.
But no, hang on, that's fast. And let me go into calf jibes then, and then duck jibe.
Yeah, but that's another video.
Yeah, right, next week.
Well, we've got to get confused here. 2 videos, you know, learning, improving, learning.
Hurting yourself. I remember last, I got stacks of scabs from all that as well.
Yeah, all on the feet, all on the street.